Welcome to the part two conversation with Whitney Elkins-Hutten. Let's jump right back into the action.
So maybe we change the question from rather than what is enough to what is good. What serves you in this life? Because I think that the what is enough question is a trap to be able to have this discussion as to like
Ooh.
what is good? What do you want? Because to go back to what you talked about earlier with happiness, happiness is not a destination. You just don't reach the mountaintop and you're like, all right, cool, I'm here for the rest of my life happy. I think that happiness is only recognized when bad comes. Happiness is only recognized in hindsight after the fact. Because we can all think of it, a listener, think of it yourself. Like you might be going through your life and you don't like your job, you don't like where you live. Maybe you and your spouse are having some issues. But the moment that phone call rings and you find out that mom died, man, I would do anything to go back to 5 minutes ago when I hated life, because that
Mhm,
was happiness. So we're
mhm.
all just one step away, one phone call, one moment away from realizing that you were in happiness right there and you chose not to look at it. You chose to look at the 99 things you don't have rather than the infinite amount of things that you do have.
That's something that we're trying to work with our daughter. She's 13, right? Like, I can remember when I was 13. I was I was like, I it was all about what kind of genes I had, right? Go back to like the tangible. Like I had to play this pecking order game at school, and that's the mix that she's in right now. That we try to continue to ground her in the actual what life is really about. And part of that is like just a simple gratitude journal, right? Um, and it's not that we want her to like be look at life with through rose-colored glasses, but those little things are around us everywhere, right? In my journal, I started doing it on the iPhone because I love taking pictures, so I pull in pictures and I'll on my runs and I'll make a comment or whatever. But like I had a post in my journal the other day that was just like, today's good. Like, I had a good run, I had a good breakfast with my husband, I had a, good this, good that, great conversation with our neighbor. Nothing was like, wow about the day, but like, just taking time, a moment out of life to recognize what you do have, because our brains, you were talking earlier about the evolution of humans. I mean, our this operating system in between our ears is meant to keep us safe, so it's constantly looking out for the negative. It is so
Mhm.
easy to slip into that, but what allows us to operate in society is that we override that animalistic instinct all the time.
Yeah. I think another thing you talked about is a lot of a little bit adds up to something really big. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are waiting for those. It has to be those big moments. It has to be graduation. It has to be new job promotion. It has to be these things. But if you look and you see these small moments, conversation with my neighbor, a kiss from my spouse, petting my dog, all these little moments add up to a really, really big thing. Because even those big things that you think you want, when I graduate, when I get this next promotion, I'll finally be happy. Or just think back to our listener. Think back, man, when I graduate from middle school and go to high school, I'll finally be happy. It's smooth sailing from there. You get to high school. Okay. When I get to high school, when I graduate there, smooth sailing. Nope, not it. College, not it. Career, not it. And you realize that every time, the only thing that stayed constant is you wanting more than what you had. And that's okay. That's our nature. But until we're able to find out, like, oh, this is good. I have everything that I need and I want to achieve more. That
Mhm.
both of those things can be true simultaneously. We don't need to go to extremes. Our brain wants to go to extremes to conserve calories, but we have a calorie abundance here. So let's try to work a little bit harder and realize that it can be somewhere in the middle, that these two things can be true at the exact same time.
You obviously don't live in my household. My family doesn't believe that we have calorie abundance. They're always, I buy like Whole Foods and, fruits and vegetables, and they're like, mom, where's the chips?
Yeah, it's just funny though, because we have this 10,000-year-old brain, right? In this modern day body. And your brain, like one of the most calorically draining parts of the body is the brain. And your brain doesn't know that there's a McDonald's on every corner. It doesn't know that there's a 7-Eleven right over here where I can get so many calories to fill me up for days and days and days. I mean, shoot, the average American doesn't need to eat for like 3 weeks and it'll be just fine. They need to drink some water, but they won't die, even though they'll feel like it. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the 5 freedoms in life and how passive investing helps us to attain them. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah, definitely. So these are not mine. I heard this somewhere. So if you're the person who like created these freedoms, I will write me because I want to be able to like attribute this appropriately. But 5 freedoms in life, when somebody says, you ask somebody, what do you want? You know, normally they're going to say, oh, on this journey to financial independence, $10,000 a month, $12,000 a month. Why do you want that? Well, because I got some bills. I want to spend more time with my family. So you can continue to peel back the layers on the why do you want that, and you're going to land on one of 5 things. Financial freedom. They want freedom of money, freedom of choice, freedom of time, freedom of location, and freedom to create an impact in the world. I can guarantee after working with thousands and thousands of people, like it all boils down to one of those. I actually argue it's not 5, it's actually 4, because financial freedom is a pit stop on the way of getting the other
Yeah.
ones. It's the tool that allows you to get more time, choice, location independence, and create more impact in the world. Okay. You don't have to actually achieve financial freedom. Here's the bananas thing to get the other 4. Right? That's what we talk about enough. Like you can actually be creating your life, organizing your time, choice, taking a job in a better location or creating your own business or whatever and creating impact in the world. You can do that all while you're on that journey towards financial freedom.
It's that
And
magic
that's
when, right? Of like, oh, I'll
that
do it
magic
when.
wand.
It's like you could do it right now. Why wait to when? Do it now.
Yes. Yeah. And it's if people see me on social media, yes, I created the content. It is my team that has put it out there. Because I am not on social media. Um, and so many people will take advice of a 90-second reel and like embody it. And that the 90-second reel or whatever is meant to spark curiosity. You'll have to dig more. And I can't tell you, I was playing around on YouTube the other day, trying to come up with some content ideas. I put in passive investing, all this, these ideas from, around financial freedom pop up. I'm looking at these reels and they're like, you have to get this first. No, you don't.
Yep.
You don't. But you have to understand in your ideal world, if you're casting that vision 10 years out, what are you how much income do you need to get fully evolved in the other 4 freedoms? That you do need to know. But you can start, you can take a higher paying job that has better hours and maybe works from home. You can do that now. You don't have to wait. Um, you can actually, start doing maybe some, house hacking, living flipping, or, some other side hustle in order to work part-time in your job so you can free up time to actually do more investing. Like you can do that now. So it's not an either or, it's the and how do we create more of the and?
Yeah, there's Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditations. He writes a passage in there where it says, "You could leave this world tonight and allow that to dictate what you do and say today." So don't wait for that magic when, because we don't know. I mean, the only thing I can guarantee in life is that one day you won't be here. Like,
Mhm.
and you don't want to wait until that magic day, because everyone on their deathbed, they look back on the regrets, and majority of the regrets are the things that they didn't do, not the things that they did do,
Mhm.
the things that they were afraid to do, the things that they wish that they lived their life in accordance of their values rather than somebody else's values. I
You
think
can even
most of us
take
go.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but you can even take baby steps, right? Like, so, right? Like if you're, if we're taking the words of Marcus Aurelius, it's the things that you didn't do and you're afraid to go from point A to point B, right? Like if, um, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Say like you want to work from home. You live in Arkansas, but you want to work from home in Colorado. Well, maybe you just start by getting the work at home job in Arkansas, or maybe you just move to Colorado, right? Like you can pick one of those things, but as long as the point here is to be intentional about the design. And so there's a book called Designing Your Life. It is a Stanford course. is like the most popular Stanford course. It's for undergrads. You can actually I think anybody can take it online for free. It's generally geared towards undergrads, but I mean, that will have you thinking about so many different ways to um, not only visualize what you may want, because again, remember, that's the first step. Can we actually cast that vision? Okay. But then, two, how do we start breaking it down and creating like little mini tests that we can like live into? Um, some of which we're gonna succeed at. Others of which, like you said earlier, we're gonna put the hat on and go, really, it's like, oh no, I did not want to work from home. I just want to have the ability to go into the office like 3 days a week and maybe work from home 2 days a week, or to be able to work on vacation while I travel, right? We can create these mini tests as we design our life, but we have to be intentional about the design. That way we can get to the freedom that we're truly after.
Yeah. I have a friend here in San Diego, and San Diego, one of the most expensive places in the country to live. Like, I get it. It's not easy to make it here.
Hmm.
And my friend is saying, like, I need to move to Colorado. Like, if I moved to Colorado, I could finally mountain bike. I could go out to the mountains and bike. I could hike. I could fish. It's like, okay, why do you think that when you're here in San Diego, where you have all of those things available to you, you would just magically do it if you moved location? Like, you can start to design, like, yeah, maybe Colorado is slightly cheaper than San Diego at this point because it's gone up. But like, your life's not going to magically change. If you're not doing it here where you are, you're not going to just magically do it there. There's this old SNL quote or SNL skit that I like with Adam Sandler, where this couple, they're calling him and he's the travel agent. And he's like, hey, me and my wife are really having like marital issues. Like, I just kind of hate her. And I think if we went to Italy, like, that would just fix it. And Adam Sandler, as the honest travel agent's like, if you hate your wife in America, you're going to hate your wife in Italy. Like, it's like, the travel doesn't fix the problem. Like, you need to fix the problem where you are and work towards better things simultaneously.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, I'm actually like giggling if you guys are watching this on video because I gotta pull it back together because I remember that skit. But yeah, that's so true. And you know, I think it goes back to like the mini test as well, right? Like, um, you could have a vision of something that you're just like, ooh, I think that is really gonna, fit me, right? I'm wondering if we're talking about the same person because I have an old buddy of mine from high school who is a ex-Navy pilot, and he said, when I leave the Navy, I'm gonna move to Colorado, grow my hair long, and fly helicopters. Like, he was like, because I can't grow my hair long in the Navy,
That's true.
so yeah, right. Like, and he still lives in San Diego too. But like, I was just like, well, why do you have to move to Colorado to grow your hair long? Like, it was just like, I don't understand. But like, how can you create these like mini tests to make sure it's what you want? On the journey, and just it can be low stakes as well. There's a concept that's coming to mind right now: immunity to change. In that sometimes we don't make these small changes because of previous programming. Our previous belief systems
Mhm.
don't allow us to, for some reason, like, it's not safe. So we can actually say what we want. We know what we want, but we don't know how to get there. We don't know how to break down the path. It's kind
Yeah.
of like how you opened the pod today. Who gave you permission to do this? Right? And so it's how can we create those like little mini tests in an environment that is quote unquote safe? Should it not work out, it doesn't destroy the larger picture.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes into when you talk about the mindset. It's that, do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? And the
Mhm.
person that has that fixed mindset, like, I can't change. I am who I am. It was a doubt in me at birth, and I just am that way. And that's the way that, like, I grew up. That's the way that I was taught, is like, you are who you are and you can't change it. And I've had to reprogram myself over these past many, many years to try to say, like, you can be more, you can grow, you can learn, and you can try. And I think so many people, they fear that trying. They fear that, I want to experiment, because what if the experiment fails? And what if, and rather than just being okay, like, it failed and I tried it, and like, thank God that I tried it and realized I don't like it now, they automatically take that failure as, I'm a failure. And then they take that I'm
Mhm.
a failure to go back to that magical word of enough, of, I'm not enough. And all of that fear, all of these things, and it's bodily, it's like happening in the body, it's happening in the mind, all subconsciously, stops them from ever trying something new because of the fear of, I might be a failure at this. Like, what if my entire life I thought I wanted this and I didn't? What does that mean about everything else?
Yeah, it's really true. But what if you succeed? Right? There's a Far Side cartoon that comes to me. We actually had the calendar, like we bought it for our daughter for Christmas last year. Probably inappropriate for a teen, but anyway, long story short, there's a famous one about training, which is what I did, like, corporate public health and corporate training. It was like, why would we, train them? They might leave. And I'm like, the opposite was like, if you don't train them, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? So it's kind of the same concept here. If you're struggling, right? And you're saying, if I do this and I fail, like I'm a failure. But like, what if you don't do this? You have
Yeah.
no opportunity to succeed. And so there's, like I said, I really encourage people to read that book, Immunity to Change. Or maybe even like, get the Cliff Notes version. There's a couple of different, like, because the immunity to change framework is very heavy math, psychology, like very scientific, but it does really break down that some of that belief system was meant to keep us safe, and from an environment that we probably don't live in
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
And so how can we just like even just start, creating just like little tiny experiments that match our current environment that we live in?
Yeah. And you can think about it like if you're on the Serengeti, right? And you hear like a rustle in the bushes, the person that stays in the same place or hides, they survived. The guy who was like, I'm going to go check out what's inside those bushes, and they got eaten by like a tiger, they didn't survive. So those genes just didn't pass on that seeking, that curiosity gene. And you have to realize I'm not in that environment anymore. Like my
Mhm.
brain might think that I'm in that environment on the Serengeti where something might get me every 10 seconds. And you're not. You're in a different place. Now, speaking of books, I understand that you just recently released a new book from Bigger Pockets Publishing called Money for Tomorrow: How to Build and Protect Generational Wealth. And I can
Yes.
see it actually behind you as well on in your back there. For those of you who aren't watching on YouTube or on Spotify, this podcast is also a video too. So you can see Whitney's beautiful face and what's going on up here on myself. But Whitney, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, about the book, what prompted you to write it, and tell me and the audience a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So the book originally conceptually started out as a bunch of notes. I was documenting my own financial independence journey. From before I even bought the first property, investing in stocks, bonds, and mutual fund, I was feverishly taking notes, on all the little pearls and nuggets that I had learned in life. And then it eventually morphed into a framework because I wanted to be able to hand my daughter a plan. Like it was very evident she was not going to get this education in school. Myself as a parent was going to have to fill that gap. What would be the framework that I want my daughter to learn about mindset first, money, how to create it, how to keep it, how to grow it, how to pass it on. Um, and then I gave a presentation at Bigger Pockets, and they were like, "Hey, we would love to have a book on this very topic." And oddly enough, I was not the one to say yes. My friend said yes for me. She was like,
Yeah.
"Of course she'll write it." And I'm like, I have no idea how to write a book, but okay, I guess I'll figure this out, right? But anyways, but that's how the book came to being. It was really meant to be like, a framework for me to pass on to my daughter. I actually use it began using it for my coaching clients. Now, obviously I can't put everything that I do with my coaching in the book. But it's really centered around the big, like, nuggets that are going to get you 85% of the way there to like actually creating, keeping, growing, and passing wealth on.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like you ever heard of J.L. Collins?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
Simple
The
path
Simple
to
Path
wealth.
to Wealth. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's like one of those like Bibles of financial independence. And that was his exact same story. Is he wrote a bunch of notes that he wanted to give to his daughter so that she would be able to understand the path a bit better for her journey.
Mhm.
Um, when we talk a little bit, so I love to talk a little bit about generational wealth. Um, Because I think a lot of people, when they hear that's a kind of a common thing that I hear. Like, what do you want in life? Like, oh, I want to create generational wealth. And it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, oh, I need to leave my kids like a bazillion dollars. And it's like, okay. And I used to work with estate attorneys. So I used to work there. I was the financial the chief investment officer for them. So I would meet with these people, and they were constantly, baby boomers. They were kind of going towards the end of their life, and they're talking about, I need to pass on generational wealth. Like, I need to do all these things. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about your children. And it's like, well, I don't talk to this kid. I hate this kid. And like, it'd be like all these things of like, well, this guy can't get this if he does this and blah, blah, blah. And it's the constant thing we had to tell them is like, you can't control money from beyond the grave. And what I would constantly think is like, you can't pull it out in the ninth inning. Sorry for my language, but you can't be a piece of shit your entire life and your last 5 years would be like, I'm just going to leave a bunch of money so people remember me as a good person. Like, you need to go through that entire generation, your entire life needs to be these moments of good things, because people are going to remember you for who you are, not what you left them. And if you have a family who are only concerned, and I've met these families before, who are only concerned about what they're going to get when you pass away, you messed up a long time ago. And the money isn't going to fix that.
That's heavy, and that's totally true. I think the path that I take in the book is, probably what somebody should work on. I put it in terms of transitional characters. Okay, so and again, the book is largely autobiographical. Like, in my family, I did not come from money, and so I wanted my family to grow into wealth. That was my vision. Does that mean I'm going to get there in my lifetime? Maybe, but as soon as I adopted kind of more a cathedral thinking like mindset, meaning I'm going to build the foundation that everything can be built upon. That means, one, I got to build the strongest foundation possible. Number two, I got to lay the architecture that, for the cathedral to be built, and I have to communicate the plans, which means I have to communicate the mindset, the skills, the network for that to continue to be, built. So the reason why I call it cathedral thinking mindset, and this is something that I learned from a good friend of mine, Gina Barbaro, is because cathedrals, like back in the 1400s, 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, they took 150 years to build. It would be generations. The person who laid the gentleman who laid the foundational brick, it would be his grandkids or his great grandkids that would see the completion of the cathedral. But they went into that work with the intention that what I am doing is super important, but I have to be able to communicate forward and arm the next generation with the mindset, the skills, and the networks to continue on what I do. Now, kind of tying back to your story, yeah, like if you're got a whole buttload of money and you're in the ninth inning, it doesn't matter, if you were a jerk or not. Maybe you weren't a jerk, but if you didn't arm your family with those mindset skills and networks, like we got a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do. And so the book is really about, one, how do we build the solid financial foundation? Okay. And then how do we protect it? Now, we do talk a lot, some overarching principles on how to grow it. The second book, the follow-up book, is going to dive really into that grow part. I mean, everybody's going, Whitney, we want the grow part. Like, give us all the knowledge, give us all the scoop. That's going to be book 2. I'm about halfway finished with it right now. But we have to understand the overarching principles and strategy of what does wealth mean? How does money work? What are the rules of the wealth game? Okay. And then, what's the objective? And then what are the rules? So think of it like playing Monopoly, right? You don't jump in there and then, if it's your first time playing, you're like, oh, what is this game Monopoly? Define it for me. What's the objective? Okay, cool. Are there some rules here? Or objective, like, do I just need to make it around the board a bunch of times and I win? No, you have to be able to have, all the properties on certain sides of the board. You need the person with the most money, in this case, the most money wins. Fantastic. Then what are the rules of the game? Okay, well, you can't go to jail, all the time and expect to win. If you land on free parking, you get money. If you land on the, you know, properties that you don't own, you have to pay. Like, so those are the things that we have to put in place. That's the plan we have to put in place. If we don't teach those things to the next generation, it does not matter how much money you leave them. Unless they have embodied that for themselves to learn from themselves, they're probably going to lose it
Yeah.
within 1 to 2 generations.
And something I found is it's not just the generation. Like so many people talk about like the generational wealth. If I leave these kids with this money, they'll figure it out. And then there's still the question, have you figured it out? Like, do
Mhm,
you know what you're doing with it? Because I would say one of the worst things you can do is just give someone that doesn't know what they're doing a couple $1 million. Like we've seen what happens to that with people who win the lottery.
mhm,
A few years later, they end up usually in a worse place or dead because they don't know how to go about dealing with these things to be able to figure it out. And earlier on in the podcast, I talked about me being a reformed financial advisor. And the reason I say that is because financial advisors would historically start at the end in mind. They would talk about the sexy investments, the portfolio, the this, the that. This is how we're going to get more money for you. And I've
they talk about
flipped
the
that.
tactic,
Yeah, the
right?
tactic. But I think more than the tactic, earlier you said, like, I think it's 50% math, 50% mindset. I think it's 80% mindset, 20% math, in that it doesn't matter how good our math is, how good everything is. If you don't have the mindset, if you haven't figured this stuff out, doesn't matter how much money we make you, you will screw it up. And if you don't screw it up, your kid's going to screw it up. And then the pain that you're going to go through is going to be a lot worse. And earlier on, you said, like, I think you mentioned it to yourself, like, oh, one day I might get to that level of wealth that like you're viewing for your family. But I would argue that you're already there. Like you have that wealth, and that's pretty damn cool. You just have to embody it and be like, yeah, I am here. And it's all just depends on what you want to put as like the goal. And every
Mhm,
time we reach the goal just sets higher. And that's that thing of enough. Like you're never actually there because you are there all the time. You are it.
mhm. Yeah, I think for me, how I, phrase that comment is, I still have growth to do. Content's the wrong word. I am happy with my progress and my path. Like, I think the lessons in the journey, and that's what we have to get comfortable with. It's not the destination, it's the journey. Um, and that has been one of the biggest mindset shifts for me, like, on the financial freedom journey, right? Um, but I have defined where I want to go, and there is a gap there for me to complete. But I'm gonna enjoy every certain thing along the way. I'm not gonna deprive myself. Like, we are going, we're still taking all of our vacations. Like, my husband has his 50th birthday coming up. We're doing a big trip to Europe at some point in time. Like, yes, if I were super, um, living in that what if, I would save all that money and invest it, and then we would take the European vacation for when we got to the finish line. But you have to live life along the way, right? It's
Yeah.
kinda like what you said, earlier. Nobody, you know, we don't know when our last day is gonna be. We just don't. And if you're laying on your deathbed and you're like, "Oh, I wish I took that European vacation," you know, like, you screwed up.
And to go back to those ideas of those mini retirements, like, yeah, might it delay your financial independence year by 2 years? Yeah, but I mean, what is that memory with you and your kids being able to travel in Europe or whatever worth for the next 30 years of your life? Because
Mhm,
even if you did wait till you were 65 or 75, you're not going to be able to physically do what you had. Because in all of life, there's like this goal of how much money do I, or how there's balance of how much money do I have, how much time do I have, and what can I physically do? And in each aspect of these life, the things morph and they change. And too many people wait. Oh, when I get to retirement, I'll have the money and I'll have the time. Yeah, but you don't have the body anymore. And
mhm,
when you're younger, yeah, you have the body and you have maybe the time, but you don't have the money. And like that's this balance, the Tao, the yin, the yang, of trying to figure all of it out and kind of go there. Now, Winnie, in the advent of time, you've just been so kind, and I really enjoy this conversation a lot. But I want to give you the podcast to share with our audience a little bit about yourself, or not about yourself, but about you and like where they can go to find you in case they're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're needing guidance, if something that I said has resonated with you about passive investing and creating, those 5 freedoms in life, you can find me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. And you can also find my book on Amazon.com or biggerpockets.com.
Wonderful. Now we have a few questions that we close out with each one of our guests. Now I'd like to ask you just two. Number one is, Whitney, if you can go back 20 years, 10 years and give a younger version of yourself some advice, what advice would that be? One piece of advice.
One piece of advice. Oh my gosh. I put a whole book on this. There's not just one. I think casting that vision, you know,
Yeah.
I think my younger self was just, and that's the beauty. I'm watching my teen go through it. Living in the day, they like cast a vision. It's okay to cast a vision. Here's the thing. You can change it next year. That's totally fine. But if you cast a vision, then you can be kind of, start putting puzzle pieces in place now to be directionally correct for where you want to go.
That's awesome. I've always, something I wanted to talk about earlier was if I could go back, I would tell myself, enjoy the journey. Because too many of us were like, oh, when I get there, I'll finally be able to be happy. And one of the biggest, I read this book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, and one of those ones that like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I like physically cried when I was reading this book. When I read the fifth one, it was, I wish I allowed myself to be happier. And like that came to the realization of like, oh, it's a choice. And like, it's there all the time. And we choose subconsciously, most likely, to not be happy, to be happy when, and to
Mhm.
have that ability to see like, yeah, everything's going to be okay. And it might not be okay in the way that you want it to be okay. And it'll be okay. So just enjoy that journey along the path. And when it comes to this journey of financial independence, becoming a better person to basically all things in life, if you're not enjoying the journey, you're doing something very wrong. Just
Mhm.
like you said there, Whitney, like if you were saying like, oh, in 50 years, when I finally reach retirement, then I'll be able to have some fun because right now I have to suffer in order to have fun later. Like you're doing something wrong.
Mhm.
You need to change something in your mindset. Don't delay happiness to a future date.
You just brought something to mind. I think, a big inflection point for me is I had a huge car wreck whenever I was 25, broke my back. Um, and yeah, like there was so much that went right in that car wreck for me to be able to do, physically, be able to do what I do today. Um, I live very normal life. Uh, but I think, I wonder how much of that was a blessing to me because from that point in time, I was like, "Damn, life is short." Like, really, really short. I think the next year I went to South America, or not South Asia, Southeast Asia, and traveled. I went, traveled through China and Cambodia and Thailand and Malaysia, and, I was like, "Peace, I'm out."
Yeah. But like you said earlier, there's 99% of things are reversible. And the thing that isn't reversible is your inevitable death and the death of the people around you that you love the most. Like you can't get those times back. I mean, there are people in my life now that with all the money that I have, like I would give all of it up for 5 more minutes. And like
Absolutely.
when you take that and you realize that like right now, all these things that I'm putting off to tell my kids that I love them, to like hug my dog, to do all these things, you have infinite numbers of those moments right now. Don't wait until after it's gone. You can't get it back to say, damn it, happiness, all of these things was right there. And I
Yeah.
let it slip by me for a future when. The second question we have for you, as the FI guys, obviously FI stands for financial independence. What we found from talking with so many different guests from my experience as a coach is that financial independence means something extremely different to all people. And I know we covered the 5 freedoms of life, but I want to ask you more specifically, what does financial independence mean to you, Whitney?
I to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. And if I'm gonna add in, like, the kind of, financial freedom for as long as I want, right? Um, so there's that, but coupled with, what I was talking about with I really embody that. I call it the happiness formula. Like, what are those experiences I wanna have? Small, medium, big, locally in my own neighborhood, internationally, like, I think on all different levels, how do I want to grow? I mean, I have like a art piece on my wall. I redo it every 6 months. Like one of my ways I wanted to grow is I wanted to learn how to make cheese. Like who says that? Like most of us think like, oh, I'm going to take this class and open up this podcast and, do all these things in my business. And I'm like, you have to think on all levels. And then how do you want to give back in the world? And, how do I want to give back with my time, my knowledge, and my money, right?
Whitney, thank you so much for joining us. All of Whitney's links will be down in the descriptions below for our audience members. And to everyone who's listened, stuck around, please leave a like, leave a comment. But most importantly, please share the Five Guys podcast with at least one person. Share the wisdom that Whitney came and brought to us, because it's so much more fun to go on this journey of financial independence, this journey of life with a friend. There's an old Nigerian proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And this life, financial independence, passive investing, it's a far journey. You don't want to get through it fast, because if you do, then we're expiring way quicker than we want to. So bring someone along. You don't want to end up at the time where you reach financial independence and you ask your friend to hang out and they're like, I have to work, because you were too selfish to tell me about it. So with that, Whitney, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you next week to all of our guests.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krish. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.